Welcome to another episode of With a Grain of Salt. I'm your host, Isaiah Salter, and I'm super excited about this episode. I'm going to be sitting down with one of my most favorite people, a mentor of mine, Tom Andino, where we're actually going to be diving into a little bit of my story and, where I come from and why I want to continue to embrace this journey and go down this journey with WAGOS. So I'm super excited for you guys to tune into this, and remember, most importantly, to take everything you hear and see with a grain of salt.
So I met you about 18 months ago, which is hard to believe. I mean, in many ways, it feels longer to me.
Yeah.
But there was a quote that was hanging in my office, and it said, "If you could only sense how important you are to the lives of those you meet, how important you can be to the people you may never even dream of, there is something of yourself that you leave at every meeting with another person." And I love that last line. It's a quote by Fred Rogers, which I think is why we're here.
Yep.
Because after that first meeting, you clearly left something with me, and I think with you. And at that first meeting, I asked you, I said, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
So tell us who you are.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I think I've struggled with that question growing up because, we're so quick to say, like, our job or our career or what we do. And I think it was I forgot that Jim Carrey who really opened my eyes to like that question. And he said, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And that's kind of how I see myself. I am a unique individual, a very spiritual being having my own unique experience on this earth, just trying to be my most authentic self, and the things that I do, whether it's playing basketball, doing a podcast, having a brand, all those are extensions of me, but they're not me, if that makes sense. And so, I think that at the root of it, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. I'm a person that tries his best to root himself in gratitude every day, to be thankful for everything that I've experienced, to connect with people on a really deep level, and really just try to be as present as possible, honestly, like at the root of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love what you said about some of the different things that you do, because those are ways that you manifest who you are to the world. But those things are not who you are. Right? I told you this a long time, right? You're the thing.
Yeah.
But we spend so much time in our culture trying to figure out what to do that we forget how to be. And I think what you're doing, right, the way that you show up in the world and what you're trying to do with WAGOS is invite people into a way of being. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a beautiful insight of yours. I think, just understanding, like going back to what I said, that we are all unique beings. Like, I just think the best way to live your life is to be authentically all of who you were made to be, and figuring out that process, that is a journey. Like, you're not going to reach a certain point where you're like, all right, I've gotten it. I think just showing people that that's a possibility, and that's actually going to lead you to all the things that you've been searching for in all the wrong areas, if that makes sense. And just giving people the space to really be themselves and not feel forced to confide to this box or do that thing. Like, you can figure out what you want to do with your life. And that's why, even though it is the brand, take things with a grain of salt, be open-minded, think for yourself, figure out genuinely what you want to do and who do you want to be, figure out the unique gifts and talents that you have within yourself. And for me, that's kind of my mindset with the things that I create, is trying to create that space that allows people and makes people feel that, on a deep level. Like, when I interact with this content or I'm doing whatever, like, I feel like I can just be me, And so, I think that's a really good insight of yours.
You've been on a journey that has led you to this point. A lot of interior work, self-reflection. Tell the viewers, as much as you're comfortable, what has led you to today. How did you get here? And then we can talk about where you're going.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll bring it back because I think our childhood says a lot about who we are today. And and shapes, the person that we become. So I was born in Buffalo, New York, and we only were there for 3 years. So I left Buffalo when I was 3, and the reason we left was because there were some things that happened with my dad, my biological father, and my older brother. Me and my older brother have different dads, so we both experienced some really like tough things very young. And for my mom, it was just like, after seeing what had happened to me and my older brother, she was like, yeah, we got to get out of here. And she's also been through her own, things that have, when I hear about those things, and I'm like, yo, it's crazy. But we left when I was 3, went to Florida for 2 years, and that's where I met my stepdad. His name's Craig. And that's where my mom and my stepdad met. And then we were in Florida for 2 years, and then we went to North Carolina, Charlotte, and that's where I grew up. And my childhood was very interesting. My mom has always said that, and my grandmother always said that I was a very good child, but I was just a lover. Like, I just loved to love on people. I loved to give everybody hugs. It didn't matter if I knew you or not. I was into music very young. My dad, that's something that he put me into. When I was 2 or 3 years old, I was in his lap in the church with drumsticks playing. I have pictures when I was a kid holding drumsticks. Like, I've always had a love for music. And so, yeah, after we left, grew up in North Carolina, and the thing that I always remember about my childhood that I didn't realize until later in life was that my mom gave me the best gift that I could ask for, which was unconditional love, allowing me to really be curious, try a lot of different things, just be that child, you know what I mean, and use the world as my playground. Now, there was a lot of things in there that was extremely tough because obviously, didn't grow up with money, grew up in a pretty tough situation as far as finances and stuff. And when my stepdad came into my life, my older brother's the complete opposite of me as far as, he dealt with a little bit more anger issues. He had ADHD. He was diagnosed very young. He had trouble in school. He got caught in the wrong crowd very young. And so for my stepdad coming into our life, it was very difficult for him to navigate that with my older brother, and they had a lot of time. And so seeing that from my perspective, my brother, whether it was getting kicked out of the house or him and my stepdad getting into like real fights, him struggling with school, him dropping out eventually in 11th grade, seeing all these things that my brother had to deal with, but knowing that I was always getting good grades, I wasn't a bad kid. Me and my stepdad had a fine relationship, and I almost being a good child because I love my brother so much. He never had that guidance. My stepdad has also been through his own struggles and things that he dealt with as a child, even with his father. So he was still trying to navigate that, and my older brother being the oldest, it was just tough for them to figure things out, and there just wasn't that guidance. And they were trying to figure things out on the spot, and so from my perspective, just seeing that, it was just so tough because I always tell people, and I talk to my mom about it all the time, like I truly believe my older brother is one of the most talented, unique people I've ever met in my life. And I think a lot of times when things are done to you at such a young age, and you never really have somebody or something to help you navigate that, it can really express itself in very unhealthy ways in your life. And that's what happened with my older brother. I think at the root of it, man, my older brother was just searching for love, from him being abused or him going through the things that he went through as a young age. Like, he was always just trying to search to be loved, to be valued, and appreciated, and he never had that, and he was trying to find that, whether it was in the groups he was hanging around or the drugs or the different things he was trying. It was basketball at one point, and I just saw all these things, and it just made me feel really like guilty inside because I knew I was doing all the right stuff. But from my point of view, I never was able to, I just was never a hateful kid, so I only knew how to be positive. Even when my mom kind of really sat me down one day and told me everything that happened to me when I was a child with my dad and all this stuff, first thought was forgive. Immediately, I was like, all right, I'm going to forgive. Like, I don't know why he would do that to a kid. I don't understand it. I was so young, but I know it's not in my heart to hate. So I was like, I forgive him. And that's just how I live my life. I mean, even, they call it the teacher's pet. Like when you're always kissing I was the teacher's pet. I'm not going to lie. Like I was always conscious of just trying to just be as positive as possible. And I always in my mind was like, if I'm a nice kid, if I'm radiating positivity, if I'm on everybody's good side, especially the teachers, then I will just naturally get good grades and like things will work out. And I never liked school growing up. I hated it. I didn't like reading or any of that, but I also liked the feeling of being a good student and having that rep, so just growing up, I mean, I've always been that way. Like my mom said, I've always been a lover, and that's just who I am. And there's been a lot of things that have happened, and we can get into that kind of have shaped me in one way or the other. I grew up very religious. I grew up in a Christian, non-denominational household, and my church experience wasn't negative at all, I'd say. I think it was more of a personal thing because of how open I was and loving I was. As I started to get older and mature and started to hear certain things from my religion or in church or around the friends I was with, I started to fall into the trap of just entitlement and being judgmental, and confusing that for righteousness because, I was like, well, I'm going to church, I'm reading my Bible, I'm praying, I'm not smoking, I'm not drinking, I'm not partying. Like, y'all need to be doing this. If you're not doing this, you're wrong. But I never would say it like that. I would still be around people who smoked and drink, whether I was in school, not like outside of school, but I would still be around them. And I played basketball, so like there was people on my team that did that stuff in AAU and all this, and listened to rap music and all that stuff. But and I never felt comfortable like telling somebody like you're wrong, but I knew in the back of my mind of how I felt. Like I was like, nah, that's not right. And as I got older, I got more attached to certain beliefs and certain ideologies and thoughts or perceptions, and that's when it started to come out. Like I remember having a girlfriend in 11th grade, and in the midst of it, I thought I was helping her by telling her like, don't do this, don't go there, don't, and if you do, we're done. Like I thought I was coming from a place of like, oh, like, I know what's best because I'm the one going to church and I understand things. But looking back, I mean, it was very controlling, very negative and forced. And I think anything forced isn't from God, isn't aligned with love unconditionally. And so, that was something that really I had to reflect on later in life. And then I go to college, and we can get into, there's so much stuff that I feel like I'm skipping over, but we'll get into that. But then I go to college, and I think college is a very transformable time for a lot of people, opened me up in a lot of areas. And then, opened me up in a lot of areas. And obviously I played college basketball, so that was an experience for sure. And yeah, I'm gonna hold it right there because I want to get into some other stuff, but we'll get into that. Yeah, so I'll just leave it with that. Yeah,
I think we get into it can be I think a slippery situation when we start to put ourselves in the place of God, to be His arbitrator and pass judgment on other people. It can be toxic, and we start to close our world and turn inward. And we're built for community.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I think you do so well. And I think the more unbelievable, as you're putting out goodness into the world and drawing people towards you, that positive mindset, and you think, well, this is great, and you're kind of on a trajectory.
Yeah.
Right? And then something happened in your life that could have sent you in a very different direction, and almost did.
Yep.
Tell people about that.
Yeah.
Because I think the more, I've told this to you before, the more unbelievable someone's story is to the person looking at you now, I think the more impactful it is.
Yeah.
And gives people courage and hope to deal with whatever they're dealing with in their own life.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So we're in college. It was The college, I played college basketball, obviously, so there was a lot of different things. I went to 3 different schools. I started at AIC my freshman year, had a really good freshman season, but the school wasn't the best. It was in a really tough area. Transferred to Adelphi University in Long Island for my undergrad to finish that, and then finished at Lemoyne these last 2 years for my grad years. And I had 2 extra years of eligibility because of COVID and my redshirt year that I had my sophomore year. But in that time, that I'd say at Adelphi, that was easily the most transformative time of my life. And, I think, some people know, some people don't. But, yeah, the moment you're talking about, it was April of 2021, I want to say. Leading up to that point, I was in a very reflective state. I had gotten really heavy into smoking marijuana. I got really heavy into that my sophomore year in college, so that's like 2020. First time I ever tried it too, because I remember growing up, my brother was into all that, and I was like, that's horrible. If you do that, nah. And then college kind of opened me up in that area, so I started doing that heavy. I was partying, I was going out. I wasn't like wilding, but I was enjoying my college life. It was just living. And I remember it was COVID, so it was 2020, fall of 2020 going into 2021. That winter time was a very weird time, because I just remember being exposed to just different things, and I was really heavy into smoking at the time, and my views on certain things were changing a little bit. And there was something that happened that is very hard to explain with words. I like to call it like it was really like a spiritual awakening time for me. I don't really know the specifics of, I can't really put it into words. I just know that time was extremely like eye-opening to me, and it changed everything. And so that happened, and then I'm in this very reflective period trying to figure out all these different things, yada, yada, yada. My energy started to change, started to just be around different people. And fast forward to the end of March, beginning of April, I had gotten admitted into the psych ward because, I had changed so drastically that I guess it concerned people around me, especially my teammates. And that's, there's a lot of stuff in there. But all in all, I got admitted into the hospital, and that was the first of 6 times. So I got admitted in the end of March, got out at the beginning of April, and that's when I got diagnosed and with bipolar disorder. Sorry, I didn't mention that, but I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I just remember that first time, being in that hospital. If anybody has been in a psych ward, it's like zombie land in there. Like, it's a very scary place because, the way I got admitted was they take you in and then they bring you all the way down to this basement where it's like the holding facility. And they kept me in there for like 2 or 3 hours. I didn't get to call my parents. They didn't tell me what was going on. They just had me sit in a room with 5, 6 other people who I don't know. And I don't even like to use the word crazy because, I think that word is thrown around about. It was just very scary for me because I didn't know any of these people. And, I was trying my best to just stay calm and relax. But, after 2 hours of y'all not, like, they're behind the glass and they're not talking to you. They're looking at you like you're not even a human. They're not letting you call your mom or your stepdad. Like, you get frustrated. And I remember I was so mad down there that I took the phone, the phone that because they wouldn't, like, the way it works is like there's like one of those old phones, and they gotta do the thing for you to be able to use it, and they wouldn't let me use it. So I picked it up and I broke it. And it was done. It was a wrap from right there. Right, that's all they needed to see to admit me. And so it was like, okay. And then I remember like these men came out, put a shot in my arm, and I woke up in the psych ward the next day. And those next 3 days in the psych ward are very blurry to me because I was on so many drugs that I don't remember it like that. But my mom tells me about the stuff like I was saying on the phone and stuff, and I'm like, yo, like, there's no way, But I remember kind of clearing up and just being incredibly scared. And that was the first time I ever felt the urge to hate. Because, look, when I found out who put me in there, and it was, people I thought loved and respected me, or were there for me that put me in there, that was the first urge I had to hate, but still couldn't do it. I couldn't, like, and I tried to, but I just couldn't. And the thing that experience did for me that first time was it put me into a state of solitude because I had nobody in there. They're telling me I have this disorder and they're putting me on these medications and I'm just completely lost. And that was the first time in my life that I realized that I don't know the person staring back at me in the mirror. I've been living my whole life just living, listening to what other people have, and just kind of floating. But I never really took the time to pump the brakes and say, who is Isaiah Salter? Like, who are you for real? Like, and that was the first time I realized I didn't know that person. And I remember coming out the first time after like 8 or 9 days, and that was a very tough time too, because in my mind, I thought only the people close to me knew where I was. The whole school knew. The whole entire school knew, when I thought only my team knew, and select few. So I tried my best to just come back and act normal. But you could feel people looking at you like, nah, like, we know where you were. We know what you're diagnosed with. We, like, kind of like distancing themselves slowly. And I was like, whoa, this is tough. And obviously they put me on medication, and that was extremely difficult too. I remember the first day I got out the hospital, I ran to my car, went to go get some more weed and smoked, because I was just because they told me you can't ever smoke again or you might die with the medication. I'm like, oh no, there's no way. So I remember going to my car and doing that. And after I did it, I had the craziest anxiety attack. I felt like I was having a heart attack, beating, yada, yada, yada. I remember calling one of my teammates and trying to just seek for help. And then, I finally got over it. Then I was like, okay, I'm done. I'll take the medication. So I started taking the medication, and that made me feel like a zombie. I didn't like it at all. So I was struggling with these back and forth for a little bit of taking the medication for a day, not taking it for 2 days, trying to smoke, not smoking, taking more medication. And then I guess that caused another chemical imbalance in my head, and I ended up back in the hospital again like 2 weeks later. That time was really tough too, because it was just, I hadn't fully accepted I had a bipolar. I was like, that's not true. And then being back in there again, and they're telling me you have this, and then they're giving me more medication, and I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like, what's going on? And I just remember, so like, obviously that it was like 7 or 8 days I was in the second time too. I came out, and I remember telling myself, like, I don't know why this is happening to me. And it is extremely difficult, but I think the best thing I can do is just try to embrace it. I can just try to embrace it. I don't know why. Like, I don't want this, but I'm going to try my best to embrace it. And I remember writing in my notes just a full, long paragraph about, my story, explaining that I just recently got diagnosed and how all this stuff's actually on my Instagram right now. But I did that because I felt like an alien in my own body. I felt like an outlier. I felt extremely lost and confused. I felt like people were just looking at me just incredibly, like, inhumane in a sense, just because, it's hard for everybody to understand. I got compassion. Like, if somebody gets diagnosed with a mental illness and they're going through certain things, like, you're going to look at them a little differently because of how profound the experience was. But to me, I was like, well, I don't know why this is happening to me, but this is what's happening to me. So I think the best thing I can do is just try to embrace it my best. And I remember writing that up because I had felt this weight on my shoulders of just trying to act like everything was okay when it wasn't. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to put on this facade anymore. I'm just going to tell people what's going on. So when you see me, like, this is me. This is what I'm going through. So I remember making that post, and right after I posted it, I deleted Instagram right away. I was like, I'm not doing this for the likes or the comments or to see what y'all got to say. I'm doing this to get it off my chest. This is what happened to me. This is me now. Delete. I don't even want to see what y'all got to say, but just know when you see me, that's me. But something happened from that moment that changed my life forever. 2 things. One, it helped me to obviously release those things, and I was like, okay, I went immediately to crying my eyes out after I posted that, because it was just so scary to be that open. But the amount of people that came up to me throughout the next week, whether it was in the dorm or around school, and opened up about certain things they were going through or how much that meant to them, changed everything. And I was like, hold up. that was the moment where I learned that vulnerability is not a weakness, but it's a superpower to connect us on a very deep level. People were telling me stuff like some deep stuff that you would have never. I've seen these same people all around. Like, you're going through that, you're dealing with that, and I had no idea. I would have never been able to know if I didn't open up about what I was going through. And from that moment on, I was like, I got to start embracing this. Now, granted, I'm still incredibly lost. I don't know who I am, and I still have that pull to still do some of the old things I was doing. So, to keep a long story short, that next year from April 2021 till April 2022, I ended up in the psych ward 6 times total. So that was twice after I posted, and then I ended up in it 4 more times. And that was incredibly difficult. And it was just a lot of, I don't know, it was just so tough. It's hard to even put into words, like going through that 4 different times, or 6 different times in 4 different hospitals. Like, and some of them were horrible. I mean, like horrible. Like, you should not be treating humans like this. This is not a place where people get help. This is a place where people, like, I don't know, it was just very scary. So for me, it was just a tough year, but I wouldn't change it for anything, because that year is what caused me to really dive deep. And that's when I kind of took a step back away from religion. And I said, you know what, like, I can't believe in anything or know anything outside of myself if I don't know who I am first. And that was the decision I made. I said, I'm going to step away from, going to church or being religious, because I was lukewarm. I wasn't going to church in college. I wasn't doing any of that. So I was like, I'm going to step away, and I'm just going to open myself up to figuring out who I am, and just starting from scratch. And I remember just, getting really heavy into, like, reading about different cultures, different backgrounds, different beliefs, opening myself up to what was out there, and really just exposing myself to, like, all the things that I've cut off because of this box that I had life in. I had everything figured out. And so I started going, and I also made that commitment that, I knew there was an issue that when every time I was alone, and this is what the hospital showed me, like, being in the hospital, you don't have phone, you don't have TV, you don't have electronics. It's just you and your thoughts and medication and other people and doctors. And how uncomfortable I felt sitting with myself and those thoughts that came up. I said, that's a problem. If I can't sit with myself for 5 or 10 minutes without feeling like I'm going to, like, freak out and I got to go distract myself, that's a problem. And so I didn't want to deal with it, but I had no other choice. In the hospital, you have no other choice. Either you deal with it, or you just get filled with, like, resentment and hate and rebellion and say, F this, I'm not taking the medication. Then when you get out, you start just wilding. I seen it all the time. And so for me, I just took it as a sign that I need to start figuring out who I am. And so that's when I really started to sit with these fears, these insecurities, the trauma, the abuse, all that stuff that I've never dealt with before, that I kind of just, because I was so positive, I'm just going, And so I'm realizing all these things that I have within me that are just blocking me from being my authentic self. And that's when I really started to get into, like, Eastern philosophy and learn about different cultures and just study, like, just different things, read different books. Some of these books we have behind us that, like, really changed my perspective. I just started to open myself up. And I think one thing that I read, I forgot specifically, but I just remember this quote or saying that really hit me, and it was, everything that you need, all the answers you're searching for are already within you. And that gave me so much hope that I don't need to keep searching for validation or my worth in things of the external world. I can actually find that within myself. Now, did I believe it at first? No. But I knew from my past that doing the smoking, the drinking, the girls, going out having fun, where did that lead you? To the hospital 6 different times. So it's like, all right, well, obviously that don't work, And so yeah, I started to do that, and it was a process. It was just day in, day out, trying to figure things up, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of times where you feel like you just hit rock bottom again. Like, I finally got up, and then you end up back in the hospital. It's like more medication. It's like, dude, like, what are we doing? And so just trying to navigate all that. And that year was just so transformative. And I'm gonna fast forward to my senior year at Adelphi, which was 2 years ago. This was 2022 to 2021 to 2022, right? Yep, 2021 to 2022. That was my senior year. Granted, I just sat out the last 2 years because my sophomore year when I transferred from AIC to Adelphi was redshirt because it was in conference. The next year was COVID, canceled our whole season. And then that next year, now that was after being in the hospital 4 times. Played that senior year, which was incredibly difficult because I'm still dealing with this stuff, all that. And I got the pressure to perform. I haven't played in 2 years. And I made my all-freshman team. So, like, everybody had this picture that, yo, you got to be that dude. And I'm playing with a dude named Ronnie who, if y'all don't know, one of the best players I've ever played with. He's like 5'8". He's from Brazil. But you talk about heart over height, that's him. So our coach was always calling me like, y'all got to be the best backcourt in the country. All this pressure, and I'm still dealing with the mental health stuff. I'm like, nah, bro, I don't know, So, and I have, like, cause I'm dealing with so much, I don't have that fire or passion to play, But I remember that summer before. So this was the summer of 2021, going into my senior year. I was still on medication. That was the first time I ever really went into depression. Or knew what it was. And I always had this idea that, you can control your thoughts, like, depression. Like, I would always tell people, just go read the Bible, or just, don't think about it, man. When you're going through it, it ain't that simple. It gave me a whole new perspective. And so I remember that summer, that's when I was like one of the lowest of the lows. Like, I've never felt like that. Like, to me, what I like to call depression for my life, what it felt like was I was stuck in this very, very small, dark box, and I couldn't get out. I was just stuck, like, constantly, just the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, constant discomfort. Like, there just wasn't something right. And I remember Jim Carrey saying a quote, and he said, depression is like your body telling you it doesn't want to be this character anymore. And so I feel like for me, it was because I was in the process of letting go of all the things that weren't me, but I hadn't fully figured out who I was yet. So I was in this middle place that was extremely difficult, and it was like my body was like crying out for me to just like figure something out because we were lost, And so it was really tough, but something that I always like reflect on is that even though I had no drive to go work out, I was incredibly low, I still got up every day and went to go work out. I still got up every day and went to the gym. I tried my best, like it was incredibly difficult, and I'm not going to sit here and say I would do that if I didn't have a season I had to play. Like if I had no obligation to play basketball, I probably would have just sat and soaked in it and let it just consume me. But knowing every week I got a call from Coach Duke, hey man, really excited to get you back up here. We know you're going to be amazing. Like, can't wait to see you and Ronnie, best backcourt. I'm like, all this pressure. I'm like, I got to go to the gym. Because if I don't put it to work in, I'm not going to perform, So that's what that summer did for me. That was where, like, I feel like a lot of resilience was built in me, like just, continuing to fight through. And every time life knocks you down, just getting right back up, even on the days you don't want to. And so then fast forward to the senior year, we had a really good season. Me personally, I had a good season, but it was just tough dealing with the mental health stuff and, not feeling like me and the head coach at the time could get deep. It was really just about basketball, there's no hate to that, man. Like, nothing but love. But for him, it is about just basketball. That's his job as a head coach, to win games. So it's just basketball. We never got really deep, but the whole time I wanted to express how I was feeling this whole time. Like, it was tough for me to go out there and play every day and deal with everything. Being one of the leaders on the team, like, and still being on medication and then trying to get off it and still dealing with that when nobody sees, like, still struggling with smoking, like, on the low, like, in and out. And so fast forward after the season, I remember because the season was so hard, it was just so much pressure. I was like, after the season, I'm just gonna, like, I can't, like, it was just so hard. I was like, I'm just gonna smoke again. Like, I can't wait to just smoke. And right when the season ended, it was like the day after the season, I went and just started smoking, and it became a routine. So it was like, wake up, smoke, go to class, smoke, work out, smoke a little bit, go eat, smoke, work out, smoke. Like, it was like that. Go to bed. Like, it was like that every day. And then I stopped taking medication. So that's another switch. So it's like just a lot of chemical, like, switches in my mind. It's not any consistency. And ended up right back into the hospital. So this is the 5th time. And that was really tough. That was really, really tough because I felt like I let everybody down because it had been like almost, it had been since the last season or last school year since I'd been in the hospital around them, because I went one more time when I got home. But so I had felt like, dang, like we're doing this again. And I had felt so like bad being in there, like, man, like I know they're probably like, yo, and I didn't get a call from my coach at all. I felt like he hadn't given up on me, and it was just tough. And so I remember getting out, and a few days later after I got out, like 2 or 3 days after I got out, and I'm gonna put this out there before I express this, like, no hate for this man at all, for my coach, none of that. I think everybody deals with things differently, and I can't imagine how hard it was for him to have a player continue to end up in the hospital and cause all this stuff. I wasn't negative. I wasn't a bad teammate. I know who I am as far as that. But I'm sure it was really tough on him, and him not being the deepest of people, you just don't want to deal with that no more, So 2 days after I got out the hospital, and this was postseason, we had already had individual meetings and all that. 2 days after I got out the hospital, he called me in for a meeting. It was him, the assistant coach, and the athletic director. And he said, hey, man, like, I'm just going to get straight to the point. We're going to suspend you from the team for the rest of the postseason. And I'm like, for what, dog? Like, for what? And he was like, it's just been really tough. And I feel like, a lot of the culture is moving more into a negative direction because of, the things you've done in the locker room and things like that. And I'm like, what have I done? He's like, no, we don't need to get into it. We're just going to make this decision, give you some time. And I'm like, all right. I got up and shook all their hands. And I remember going to the locker room. I've never cried that much in my life, ever, because it was tough, because I was crying so much because I was going through all this, and then I come out and I'm trying my best to be positive and stay positive through the whole thing, and just keep battling back. And when he did that, it was just like it felt like we're giving up, man. Like, we've seen it too many, like, we're done, and it hurt so bad. And I just remember bawling my eyes out. And then after, like, I called my mom and my stepdad, and then after like 15 minutes of crying, I looked myself in the mirror and I was like, you can't be broken. You cannot be broken. No matter what happens to you, you cannot be broken. And it wasn't, zero of it was directed at the coach or any, it was me and me. I'm like, bro, like, this is your life. This has nothing to do with anybody else. Like, we're not going to look at the coach and say because he suspended you is that, no, like, you just can't be broken, And so then I just, started working out more like that. I was still smoking. And then a week, I wasn't. I actually stopped at this time because everybody kind of knew. They were like, bro, you can't be doing that. So then like 2 weeks later, because they had switched up the whole medication, ended up back in the hospital again. And this was the 6th time. And this one was, I ended up in a psych ward called Zucker Hillside, which I got a lot of love for that place because it's the only college psych ward in the country. And that, I feel like they do it the best as far as creating an environment where, yeah, it's still difficult. Being any psych ward, it's gonna be tough, but it didn't feel like I was being dehumanized or an animal in a zoo. It actually felt like they were trying their best. It's hard, but trying their best. But because they had switched up the medication so much, and the last time they had just upped the doses of the same medication. This last time, like, the doctor, it was a new doctor I hadn't seen before, and I don't think he did a really good assessment because he just totally cut off the old medication and put me on this new one. Worst medication of my life. Like, it was called Invega Sustaina. It was a shot for like 30 days. It was the worst medication ever. And so it gave me this thing called akathisia. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, but bear with me. Where, like, your body is shaking, trembling, saying, get up, move, do something. And your mind is like, it doesn't want to do anything but sit still. There is no anything that makes it feel better. It is like your body is literally shaking. Like, we need to move. But your mind is like, we can't move. Like they're stuck. It's like, oh, it was so bad. So couldn't really work out, couldn't hoop. Every time I went to go try to play basketball, shaking. I couldn't even get a shot up. And I'm talking to my mom this whole time, and she can feel me through the phone, like she's there. And my mom's a whole nother story we'll get into, because she is a whole nother story. So, I was dealing with that, and I remember after like a week and a half, 2 weeks, I was almost time to go home. And me and the coach still hadn't talked. This has been probably like a month and a half, 2 months. We're about to go home. I remember talking to the GA at the time, the grad assistant. I'm like, yo, do they want me to transfer? Because my man ain't said a word to me since I've been suspended. And I get like, yeah, we need some space and stuff, but at least tell me what's going on. He was like, nah, they haven't been looking for any new guards. Like, you're good. Like, I think they're just giving you time. I'm like, all right, cool. So in my mind, I'm coming back to Adelphi for my master's. But I'm just going to take this time. But I remember, so the akathisia, I remember being on the phone with my mom towards the end, and I was like, Ma, listen, I'm about to come home, but I'm letting you know right now, whatever I have to do, I'm never taking medication again. I don't care. I'm going to figure out a way. I promise you, I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to drink. I'm not taking this medication anymore. Like, no medication is going in my body no more. And my mom just, trying to comfort me. She's like, oh, hey, we don't have to rush this. Let's just get this out your system, then we can move on to the next thing. And I remember, so I went home. Now it's like May. Yeah, it's like May, because school ended like beginning of May. I go home, and it's starting to wear off a little bit, and that's when I went into a very so this was probably the most reflective time of my life, like deep. And so I go home. I'm home for like probably 2 weeks, so like end of May, and we were moving house at the time, so we were moving into a new crib out of our old one. So that's kind of what my main focus was. And I remember getting a text from our coach, hey, let's hop on a call next week. So this is the beginning of June, right? In my mind, I'm coming back to Adelphi. Like, we just haven't talked because we need some time. So it's Friday. We got on the phone, and I'm, finally, like, guys, I've been doing well. I've been home for a few weeks working on myself. I can't wait to get back. And he was like, we're going to revoke your scholarship. You can't come back. Like, you got to figure something else out. And this is June. So I'm like, yo, you suspended me in March. I'm like, yo, why didn't you just tell me just to enter the transfer portal? I could have had 2-3 months of talking to schools, figuring stuff out. I'm like, it's June. You know what I mean? And, I said, well, it was weird too at the time, because this is when I was really I learned about meditation, and I was dibbling and dabbling when I was not doing it really heavy. I was dibbling and dabbling, but I was still exposing myself to all these different things and learning and stuff. And I remember, because I had spent that whole last year of really trying my best to figure out who I was, I remember slowly feeling a connection grow to something greater. And I remember saying a prayer. It was like a week before Coach Duke texted me. I remember saying a prayer when I got home to, the universe, just like, hey, listen, like, I know I'm still figuring things out, but I just need a sign that me doing this stuff is moving in the right direction. I need a sign, just something. Like, I need something. A week later, I got that call, and it was the most, like, anxious peace I've ever felt in the life. Like, anxious because I'm like, I got to figure out school, and I know my mom will be like, what you going to do next year? But also, it was this weird peace, because I'm like, dang, maybe this is, like, supposed to happen in a sense. And then kind of, I got off the phone. I appreciate everything you guys have done, yada, 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 and started to then started to talk to my friends and stuff about like what had happened. And that's kind of when the anxiety came, like, all right, what are you gonna do, bro? It's June, figure something out. And luckily I had a pretty good season, so I was like, I know I can get a school, but do I want to play anymore? Like, do I really want to play basketball? Because this is taking so much out of me. I just don't feel like doing it. But I was like, I'm not gonna rush. So that weekend we moved. So that was Friday. That weekend we had finished moving into the new house. We still had a little stuff, but we were sleeping there and stuff. And I had entered the transfer portal that Monday. And Coach Duke, that's his name, yeah, Coach Duke, I'm just going to say it, yeah. Coach Duke, he had sent me a message, hey, you're in the portal, everything's set. 30 minutes after I entered the portal, Coach Champ from Lemoyne, where I'm at, called me off rip. Hey, because and Lemoyne's in the same conference, so I just played Lemoyne last year at Adelphi, right? Hey, we love you. We don't really need a visit or anything. We're just gonna offer you a scholarship. Like, off rip. 30 minutes after, I'm like, yo, like that's crazy. So I went to my mom and I was like, well, we don't have to worry if I do want to continue playing. We got a scholarship. We're good for my grad school, for a grad year. She's like, oh, wow, that's crazy. That just happened. I was like, yeah. And then the rest of that summer, like I said, that was the most transformative summer of my life because for those next 2 to 3 months, every single day, I went out into that backyard from 8 to 12. I sat outside. You know, my mom and my stepdad could tell you they always saw me every single day. I went out there and I would meditate, journal, read, and just sit with myself every single day, just trying to figure this stuff out. Like I got to know more because I'm learning these bits and pieces from these different cultures and different ideas and all this stuff, and I'm learning about different I'm just learning different stuff, and I'm like, this stuff is so intriguing. I feel something inside of me saying like, I need to just lean into it. And I was sitting with myself, and I mean, I was meditating for like 30 to an hour every single day, like just sitting. And I remember it was Dr. Joe Dispenza. I have his book up here, but it was Dr. Joe Dispenza. He said, when you start meditating, when you close your eyes and it gets incredibly uncomfortable and your body says, get up. One, you know, that's the right thing to do. But the challenge is, can you tell your body, no, I'm going to sit and we're going to figure this out. And so I took that as a challenge. Every time my body said, go grab your phone or get up out of this uncomfortable state, I was like, no, we're going to figure this out. We're going to sit with the fear, the insecurity, the trauma, everything that just had happened. We're going to sit with it. We're not running from it no more. We're not going to go smoke it away. We're not going to go party or get with girls. We're going to sit with it and figure it out. And that summer showed me that, obviously, I was exposed to a lot of new ideas and stuff, but that summer showed me that the things that you think are there to like tear you down, break you down, destroy you, really are the things that can like turn out to be your greatest best blessings and build you up in a way that you would have never been able to like fathom in the moment. And I really was starting to find myself, starting to figure out who I wanted to be, find kind of my inner truth. And, that's when I really got into journaling and writing down goals and different things like that, prayer and stuff. And I remember telling myself, like, I'm going into this new school, Lemoyne, as the person, like my authentic self. This is who I am. This is who I'm going to be. And so I go there, and for the next 2 years, I mean, we're here now, but Lemoyne has changed my life in ways I can't even imagine. And obviously, there's so much more, but it's hard with, time, and I don't want to talk for hours, but yeah, there's so much more that's in that story. But I say all that to say I'm really grateful for everything. I think each and every one of those times in the hospital, the diagnosis, the medication, the depression, the anxiety, all of it was serving a greater purpose that I just couldn't see in the moment. But me staying open, trying my best to be positive, and allowing, life to move through me, it really was able to turn those things into blessings. So I know that was a lot, but
sharing
yeah,
all of that.
I know that was a lot, but yeah.
So many lessons that you highlighted in there. One, the importance of just showing up. You did that over and over again. You showed up for yourself that summer by meditating and taking those 4 hours to do what you needed to do. The importance of telling your story. The worst thing that could happen to you can be in service to other people. It might look different. The wrapping of their situation looks different. But that truth that this happened. And I had somebody in my life a few years ago who said, Tom, it's all part of your story. And you get to decide what you're going to do with it. Some of those things, I wish it didn't happen to you, but they did. Are you going to let that destroy you? Or are you going to keep moving forward and keep showing up? And I think what I love about your story is that you give people who aren't like you the courage to not stay stuck. Right? Oh, I can engage this. I can wrestle with this. I can grapple with this. I had a day a few years ago where I just woke up not feeling courageous. Normally that voice would have consumed the day. But for the first time, I engaged it. And I started talking. I was literally in my bathroom, like channeling Isaiah. I'm like, all right, Tom, what would it take for you to feel more courageous? Right? You're working your jobs, you're going to treatment, you're doing this, that, and the other thing, you're showing up for your wife and kids. And when I couldn't answer the question, I knew that the inner critic in that moment had turned into a bully. And I had to engage it and not let it consume me.
Yeah.
And I think you did that. There were so many points along the way in what you just shared with us where you could have given up. And you didn't. And in that darkest moment, right, when your coach said, you're done, that to me, you couldn't see it at the time, was the beginning of this trajectory that led you here.
Yeah.
Which is the hope that while you were here, I think you had the seeds planted, but you were able to cultivate and water and nurture what then you named as WAGOS.
Yeah.
Right? So tell people like what you hope to be and how you hope to serve the world with all that you've learned and experienced and gone through to help other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy because, you know, when I got to Lemoyne, that's where I got the name Salt because of my last name Salter. We had a dude on the team already named Isaiah, so he was called Zay. So people just started calling me Salter, and then it turned to Salt. And I just kind of embraced it. And growing up, I hated my last name. Like, I did not like Salter at all. I liked, you know, Smith or Robinson, something normal. I was like, Salter is so, I don't know nobody with that last name. But there goes to show you sometimes the things you hate the most growing up turn out to be the things that you love the most, you know. So, yeah, I got the name Salt. And then I think coming in as this person, being my authentic self and really trying to embrace who I am, you know, people started to resonate with me on a deep level. I really started to embrace vulnerability as a part of me. And, you know, a lot of people were telling me, you know, man, like, you're a really deep dude, or, man, you have a way of articulating things, or, man, you need to start a podcast, or you need to create a YouTube channel, all this stuff. And I'm just hearing it from a lot of people. And I was like, well, I want there to be a way for me to use my experiences and what I believe my gifts are to be of service to others. Because I remember, I want to say Jay Shetty said that, you know, the equation to fulfillment is figuring out what your gifts and talents are, turning them into skills, and then using those skills in service of other people. And that hit me so deep. And I said, that's what I want to do in my life. And so, leading all that, obviously, you know, I was sitting in a room with 3 of my friends, and they were like, yo, when are you going to start a podcast? I was like, man, I don't even know what it would be called. And one of them was like, With a Grain of Salt. And it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, oh, shoot. So then I immediately went and wrote it down. And that was like December of last year. I didn't start creating WAGOS till last June. But that was like, December of like last year. So, or like 2023. Yeah. December of 2024, 2022, excuse me. Yeah, gosh. But I remember that, just writing that down, and then just opening myself up. I was like, you know, I always preface, like, whatever your faith is, however you say God, universe, Allah, whatever it is, like, that's you. But, you know, I'll use God because I feel like that's a language people can understand. But my prayer every morning was, God, use me. Use me. Like, I am here to be used. I'm not searching for happiness. I'm not searching for, this or that. I just want to be used in service of others. And I just remember saying that every single day, and slowly just opening myself up to whatever was out there. And, you know, as time went on, things just started to happen in my life, synchronicity, certain things that I started to realize when you really align yourself with your authentic self and your energy and start to move down that path, the things that will happen are for real magical, like seriously magical. And it all led me to creating WAGOS. And, you know, since I started to where I'm at now, the intention has been the same: to serve, to connect, to just be my most authentic self, in hopes that people will understand they can do the same for themselves. I'm not here to tell people what they should or shouldn't do or force anything on anybody. I'm just here to be myself and radiate, try my best to radiate unconditional love, vulnerability, community, and allow people to come into that space and be themselves. And so where I'm at now with WAGOS, obviously we're doing the podcast, and there's a lot of other things on the back end we're working on, but I'm just going to let it, because like I've told you before, I feel like WAGOS was a gift to me. It's not mine. It was a gift to me from God, and I'm just the vessel it's coming through. And so I'm just going to keep doing my part to be obedient, to stay disciplined, to stay devoted, and allow it to cultivate the way it needs to cultivate and reach the people it's meant to reach. And so, yeah, that's where we're at right now.
It's so awesome to sit here with you, to know the backstory and see where you are and the hard work that you've done, because we think so often that we don't have choices, but we do. And I tell people that when I get inspired by hearing their story, because I've sat with enough people that have made other choices or have stayed stuck. And it's toxic. And I think any story of redemption, I think in pop culture that I resonate with, whether it's the Grinch or Rudolph and Hermie, or Tom Hanks was in A Man Named Otto. When we see those pictures where people start to turn inward, it's like watching a dandelion have Roundup sprayed on it, and it just withers and dies. But when we open ourselves to other people, to the outside world, and live a life of service, it puts so many things in perspective, And I think you hit on something so powerful when you said at the beginning, you looked in the mirror and you realized, I don't even know me. And the work that I've done the last 4 years, it took me a long time to figure out what I was trying to do. But somebody asked me, and I said, I'm trying to help the person in front of me have an encounter with themselves and with others and with God in any order. But what I didn't know, 99% of the time, with the age group that I worked with, college students, was that it had to start with an encounter with self. But too often, the only encounter right now that people are having with themselves is the phone, which doesn't give you verbal feedback, or the voice in your head, because we learn about ourselves from other people. So what I didn't know at the time, is I'm sitting talking to people like you in my office, was have an encounter with self, others, and God. I was the other. And it started to change me and open me to hear other people's stories. And it put my own struggles into perspective. It also made me know I wasn't alone. Because when we're in that place, we think, I'm the only one. You don't understand. You wouldn't get it. I think we self-soothe a little bit when we're in that space, because we feel unique, right? When things are going great, we're like, oh, this happens to everybody. We don't, no. Like, there's power in sharing that story, as painful as it is, and then watching how the worst moment of your life can be put in service to help somebody else. And that's what you're doing. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Seriously, man, I appreciate you more than you know, seriously.
I know there's lots more to come.
Absolutely. There really is. This is just the tip of the iceberg, as I like to say, but I just appreciate you and giving me the space and being with me today. Truly, it means more than you know.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
My guy.
You're welcome.